Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today we're going to be making this very cute train cake. Before we start, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like for more. So first thing I'm doing here, I'm cutting out a template, a circle template, and I'm going to wrap it with foil to make it food safe. I'm going to be placing this between my cakes when I stack it. Then the next thing, I'm going to measure everything I'm going to work with. I'm measuring the width of the train tracks we're going to work with, and then I cut out that width I measured from my cake. So once I'm done cutting out, I check to be sure my track and my train are passing perfectly through the space. Then I trim. So I did a preliminary covering of the sides of the cutout. I did this so that the crumbs wouldn't distract me while I was working. I'm going to do a proper covering later on in the video. Here I dowel the first layer of the cake so that it wouldn't collapse when I stack other cakes on top of it. Using my template, I place on top and then stack the next layer of cake. And as I'm working, I always test to be sure that my train would pass through without any mishaps. After stacking the cakes, I level. Then after leveling, I trim the sides to be smooth for the fondant covering. Here I am once again testing to be sure my train is passing without issues, and then I crumb coat the whole cake and clean up my board. Measurement is very key when you are working with fondant cakes. You would see me using my measuring tape a lot while we are working. This is to be sure that I don't roll an excess or less than what I need for the work I'm about to do, because this is fondant. You have to be very careful. So after measuring what I need, I cut it out. So here I'm now going to cover up the inner parts that I did a preliminary covering for initially. So here I'm covering it properly with a thicker fondant, a thicker layer of fondant. So I pass through the tunnel and I place the fondant and trim off the excesses. So all those measurements I did, they're going to help me now as I'm rolling out my fondant to be sure I'm getting the exact size of the cake I'm about to cover. So I trim the sides to make it smooth. I don't need a lot of excess fondant while I'm working. It will be flapping around and sticking to the buttercream. You try as much as possible to avoid that. Here I use a rolling pin to roll the fondant I've already measured out, and then use it to cover. Now what the rolling pin does is that it helps you to move your fondant without cracking it, without creating elephant skin. It just rolls smoothly across the fondant. So after covering the full cake, I use a knife to trim off the excesses. And after trimming off the excesses, I remove those parts, and then using a glue, I stick the two edges together. I press it, just a little press. If it's not so neat, don't worry, you can always use something to cover it up while you are working. That's the beauty of fondant. You could always use something to bring out a new type of design. After rolling the top, I placed it there, and then I used two fondant smoothers to pinch the edges together. You know, fondant is soft enough that when you press the edges, it sticks together. So I use that smoother to ensure that I hold them all together, and then I use a knife to trim off the excesses. So after trimming off the excesses, I cut out my tunnel. If you look at what I'm doing here, I cut out the space of my tunnel from what I already covered, and I still make sure my train is passing through without any obstructions. The next thing was to cover my whole cake board. I had to cover it in panels because I had already placed the cake. I was already working directly on the board. I couldn't lift the cake so that I wouldn't scatter the under. So I was now covering the board in panels and decorating it as I go along. So here you can see my train moving through the tunnel smoothly. As you are walking, please ensure you are always testing so that if you observe any issues, you can correct it on time. After doing that, I had to use molds to cover up all the rough edges. the tunnel edges, the sides of the cake. I used the mold to cover up everything so that it would look neat and beautiful. Then I set my train tracks for the final time. After setting it, I still used some fondant molds to hold it in place so that it wouldn't fall off or shift as we were working. After doing this, you could see the train going smoothly. Like I said, always test. After every step, try your best to test so that you can correct any issues. Then I used my toppers to decorate the cake, and you can see my train moving as I was decorating the cake. So here we are done, and this is our cake complete. See my train moving through the tunnels. Thank you guys for watching. Please drop a comment in the comment section what you like, what you would have loved to see different. And if you recreate, don't forget to tag me. Bye.